about 1/3 of the infertility has been diagnosed as unexplained infertility, which means you might have something wrong, but I don't know what is that. So you deal that with by yourself. But the consumer is not happy with those answers. Consumers are looking for something I could do so I have more control. I understand what this is and I have an action plan. And by doing this action plan, and I can feel better, I can become better. So that's what they're desperately trying to look for.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Sylvia Kang, co-founder and CEO of Mira. In this episode, we discuss Mira's mission to reinvent women's hormone health. Sylvia explains how Mira's at-home hormone tracker is closing clinical gaps and empowering women at every stage of life. Plus, we talk about building a community-first platform and reimagining personalized care for fertility, menopause, and beyond. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is presented by EGYM. EGYM's smart fitness ecosystem is transforming healthcare through exercise. Combining strength equipment with AI-powered software and corporate wellness platform WellPass, it's leading the shift to proactive preventative health. Learn more about EGYM's intelligent workout solutions at egym.com. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you here.
To kick things off, I was hoping you could just introduce yourself and tell us about Mira, and then we'll kind of jump into the conversation.
Sure. So my name is Sylvia. I'm the CEO and the co-founder for Mira. For my background, I was born in China, and I actually started as a professional pianist. I started playing when I was 4, and my mom really want me to be a pianist because in the Asian culture, and they think the girl shouldn't be fighting for something that's very difficult like technology or science. But in my high school years, I realized I really love science. So I self-studied all the science classes because I went to a conservatory which doesn't offer any science classes. I came to the US. I did a master in biomedical engineering from Columbia and then followed by MBA from Cornell. And then I was working in a Fortune 500 life science company. I was managing a $100 million of global P&L as a business director. And then I started Mira. And the reason I started Mira is because I realized that many women friends, like my friends, they were starting a family and they were about 30 years old. There was little help given to them. We never had any education about the fertility. And then when we was trying to start a family, we feel like, it's just not as easy as we thought. So we either were using this ovulation predictor kit, which is 1 line versus 2 line. It's very trivial. It's like a last century technology, or we've been sent to IVF after half a year being not successful, and which is like a $30,000 out of pocket cost per person, per cycle. So there's definitely a gap in between. We don't, as a consumer, we don't understand our body, and we feel anxious, we feel stressed out. And on the doctor side, they also don't really know how to read the hormone data. So I think we really need to change that. So I had my co-founder, which is a technical guy, and we started this company in 2017.
Yeah, that's an incredible story and journey from another country and a pianist to starting this company. I think there's a lot to get into there, but first, just so people have a sense, if they're not familiar, there's the kind of hormone tracking kit that you mentioned, there's the app, there's the coaching. Like, what all does Mira entail? And then we'll get into some of the details.
Yeah, sure. So Mira is the hormone tracking device for you to use at home. So we sell directly to consumer, and we track most of the female hormones like LH, estrogen, progesterone, FSH, and we have more hormones in the pipeline in the future. So what we do is like we give you a quantitative reading about your hormone number at a time. So just imagine you're taking the lab test, which is blood drawing, and you cannot get a continuous monitoring. But with Mira, you can easily do that at home with your urine sample. So and then the data will be transferred to our app, and on the app there's data interpretation, there's plots for you, insights, and also if you choose to talk with our AI assistant, and you can do that, and you can also talk with our coaches. We have a small team, they're fertility coach, professional providers, and they can answer your question. So we mostly help people trying to conceive and going through menopause, manage irregular cycles, or anything you have a concern about your hormone profile, and we help people directly doing this. And on the other side, we also help doctor to have a better understanding about their patient's hormone cycle so they can improve their treatment outcome.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear like starting in 2017 and then growing the company. Now there's and continues to be more and more momentum around women's health in general, hormone tracking, all and doing these things at home kind of for the end user. As you conceive of this idea, you're starting to get it off the ground. Like what type of reception was there? Was there a lot of interest? Did you have to do a lot from whether it was consumers or investors or just the market in general to really educate people about what you were trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was definitely an uphill battle. So when I started in 2017, there was no such an industry called the women's health. There's no such a concept. So we were trying to raise money and we couldn't really say, we couldn't really articulate what we do. So we have to say, oh, we are IoT, home testing device, or like IVD industry. And someone said, well, you're hardware, you're consumer business. So it's very difficult to find any investor who are interested specifically in this industry. And also, when I was raising money, I had a lot of male investor, and that was a difficult conversation too. I mean, they don't really understand how hormone works, and it took a lot of time to educate them, become more like a biology 101, those kind of conversation. So obviously, it doesn't turn out to be very good. And also, I was collecting feedback from the doctor side. Absolutely, there's some doctors who are really passionate about moving forward with this personalized health whatsoever. But at that time, it's kind of rare. So I talked with a doctor introduced, an OB doctor introduced by my friend, and she said that I don't want this device. Because it's given my patients too much data. I don't want them to know. They don't understand. They're gonna ask me so many questions, gonna increase my workload. They're just gonna cause more confusion. I would hate such a device to go to market. That was exactly wording she gave to me. But when we look at the consumer side, it's really different story because obviously you can tell, right? So we're 21st century. We're trying to send people to Mars and rocket to Mars. And for women's health, such an important thing. We're looking at this paper and I look at the consumer. What they do is like they test the test strip every day and they want to track it. So they put on the have a paper and put down these strips line by line, line up over there, and then send this picture to somewhere like a Reddit to say, hey, please take a look. Am I really ovulating on this day or not? Is my line dark enough and light enough? And the other women were trying to help them. So obviously you can totally tell such a strong pain points over there. And then we decide to go to the consumer way. And obviously, I think a consumer, the good thing is that our consumer did understand what hormone means to them, and they're pulling for this. So I think that's also why our sales was able to scale up quite quickly.
Yeah, I was going to ask like if you have a sense of what you attribute the success and it resonating and growth to, because I mentioned to you before we started recording that my wife used Mira and she heard about it basically through word of mouth. Like there's, a group of young moms and they all kind of have the checklist of, hey, what do you need? And what should you use when you start thinking about it? And every single time Mira would come up. And so that was one of the things, obviously, that we were able to use. And our son is going to be 9 months old. So clearly it worked and helped a ton. And that there was so much just passion. It seems like the wrong word to attribute to, like a hormone tracking device and like urine analysis, the passion behind it, but really that's what it was. Did you try to do that? Did you set out to instill that type of relationship? How have you fostered the kind of community that you might not associate with like a hardware product necessarily or a medical device, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I didn't really prepare for that. So when I started, I was just my motivation was really simple. I saw there's a pain point, so let's do something. And I did the market research. I found there's almost no other so-called women's health company. So everything's pretty general. So I said, well, here's a gap, right? Here's some pain points, so let's foster that. But when we start to develop the product and go to market, I learned so much. I didn't know women had so many problems or until today still have so many problems going through their regular life. It's not like, oh, this is like a rare disease, only 1% of women will get that. So almost everyone going through this fertility journey, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, whatsoever, will have some problem. And usually 90% of chance this problem doesn't have an answer. So that's where the motivation came from, for our consumer to form a community. So that's why you see the consumer behavior, like our user behavior, say there's a word of mouth. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to formulate a community so we can discuss about all these things. So just some example in there, like we had users who had really irregular cycle, and this is probably even PCOS. It's like a 15% of global population for women under the reproductive age right now. So that's so popular, but there's no cure, and there's no good self management tool. Just see PCOS persons, they want to get pregnant. Until today, there is no product at all that can truly solve this. Maybe there's some product trying to help you to track your cycle, but doesn't really help you to tell like when is my ovulation time, for example. And also menopause is another super underserved segment, and it used to be a taboo. Fertility used to be taboo. We don't have tools, and we cannot even talk about this. It's not good to talk about this somehow. We have users going through perimenopause, and it's a long time journey. Not everyone's comfortable with going to hormone replacement therapy, HRT, immediately. So that suffering time is probably like easily like a 9 years, 7, 9 years, 8, 9 years before they have any official treatment. But during those years, they suffer from hot flash and brain fog affect their daily life, and insomnia. Someone cannot even sleep continuously for like a week. That totally could happen. And they go to a doctor, and doctor says, well, this is just part of your life. Just relax. There's this normal. There's nothing you could do. Same thing as fertility. About one third of the infertility has been diagnosed as unexplained infertility, which means you might have something wrong, but I don't know what is that. So you deal that with by yourself. But the consumer is not happy with those answers. Consumers are looking for something I could do so I have more control. I understand what this is, and I have an action plan. And by doing this action plan, and I can feel better, I can become better. So that's what they're desperately trying to look for. And you look at the entire women's health stage, from puberty until menopause, almost every 5 years, they're going through different stages. They always have questions like that, but there's always no problem to solve this. And the doctor is really not the best resource to get that information. So people go to Google, people go to ChatGPT. That's why you saw this community. And when Mira came out, here you go. So there is the not only a product, but this product is not only a tester. It's more like we're trying to provide our users with a solution. And this solution includes emotional support, community, somewhere they can freely talk about this. It's no longer a taboo. And our brand story really trying to voice this. I personally try everywhere I go, I try to say women's health is not a niche. We are 50% of global population. How come we just a few years ago, we just still think that's a niche. It's not correct. There's so many underserved problem whatsoever. So we're trying to help with a problem, with a product, and with a brand story. There's a spirit or like a motivation behind what we're doing, and obviously at the same time we're trying to connect our industry. Not only on the consumer side, but trying to educate doctors. Doctors now changed a lot. There are many doctors working with us. They're very open to personalized medicine, to democratize healthcare. So it's very different from many years ago. So all these things has to work together eventually to make some change.
Clearly, it's, to my point, just the word of mouth and the passion. It's working. And then also to your point, there's still so much more that can be done. When you think of, now there is this momentum behind women's health, but even that is like, it's kind of a catch-all, right? There's so many different things within that. There's hormones and fertility and all these different things, menopause. And now you're starting to have, from fertility to hormone clinics to IVF to longevity to preventative health. Have you, or how are you starting to think about, hey, how do we make inroads into these different areas? How do we continue to help inform not just users, not just doctors, but just like this industry, this category, with like, these are the different use cases. This is how this information can be put to use. And then in many ways, Mira is kind of at the intersection of all of that.
Yeah, exactly. So that goes to really from a women's health to more like a wellness management as well. I think that's a very good point. I always said that our body is never being an isolated thing. Your body is a whole thing. So what your hormone does on this today, and there's longitudinally that will affect something might happen a few years ago, and also your lifestyle, your wellness will all go into play into like a stress, for example, will all go into like how your fertility will turn out to be, what kind of symptom you're going to have in a few years if you're going to perimenopause or so on. So I think to answer the question, I think we really need something more comprehensive. And this comprehensive solution could be coming from a multiple companies working on the problem together, because you see now there's like we're testing company, and there's a or like some virtual clinic company, and there's software whatsoever. And also could be, some company growing much bigger, like for example Mira does have the vision to go more. Let's say we launch more test ones, and we can test more hormones going into wellness and taking into consideration of more hormones and see how they would affect the fertility. So both routes are possible. I see companies are doing this, but also, just another dimension on this is like it's not only a product innovation. There's many things need to happen behind the product innovation. For example, one thing is the research. Like a women's health research data is so lacking. We're not even included into the clinical trial until very recent, like probably 20 years ago. There's really lack of understanding, like when a startup company trying to disrupt this market, we need to know what is the science behind that. But not really, things like that happen, at least on the consumer side. So that means a lot of research more needs to happen. Understand, for example, everyone's suffering through menopause and about this, symptom, but what is really the root cause for the symptom? Is that the hormone change? Is that something else? And by changing our lifestyle, how that could correlate with improvement of our feeling or symptom like that. All this will need longitudinal data, will need like a continuous tracking, and will need time and funding to go in there to do research. And the product will come out based on this research, and that will be truly working. So still, I think it's going to take some time, but I see, a lot of good companies are working towards that, and obviously Mira is working towards that too.
There is this shift that happens when at the heart, right? You mentioned basically medical device, biology, like all these things that are being infused into this product that then goes the consumer route. You start to gain users and growth and momentum, and you're impacting the health and wellness of many people. And that compounds in the data set. So you have the data set, and then you improve the product, you improve user outcomes, it drives it forward. But then there's this next step of like, how do we do the R&D? How do we fuel it? How do we take it to the next level? And there are companies, to your point, that have started to do this. Do you see that as like a focal point? Like, hey, we are going to now Mira participate in, or maybe you're already doing this, clinical trials or studies or just publishing research to really drive this industry forward. And in some ways, it's you become then responsible for funding these things that are reshaping just how people think about health and well-being.
We're already doing this, and everything you mentioned, pretty much we're doing that. So we have 27 million continuous hormone data. I don't have anything to prove this statement, but I believe this is the biggest continuous hormone data set for women in the world, because no study has never been done like that before. And I did research a lot of paper on PubMed or so on. Since there's lack of women's health research, I've never found any, very solid, very well defined study about the continuous hormone data for women. So yes, so we do a lot of research right now, and we research about, as I mentioned, like a correlation between the symptom and the hormone fluctuation on menopause. And we also research about how lifestyle change will improve your fertility, what kind of things will affect that. Like for example, does age really, it's a traditional saying, oh, once you pass the age 35, you cannot get pregnant, you have to go through IVF. I don't think that's really true. Just like everyone should have 28 day cycle, that's never been true. That is average. Average means almost 50% people are above that and 50% people are below that. So what is really this personalized pattern and the information and the science and the data we can use? So yes, we're doing a lot of research on that, and obviously we have our own focus, and we want to provide consumer, our number one goal is to provide the consumer with more like a breakthrough solution. It's not only just the product. So let's say we can, one way to go is like we try to test more hormones, so we have more comprehensive pictures about how women's health will look like. But at the same time, when we have this data, what can we feed back to them? As you said, this 27 million data, what does that mean? What is a pattern? What is the tax we can apply to there? And then next the woman come to our platform and they say, okay, I say survey you a little bit, you have this kind of character. And then we know your ovulation, your symptom whatsoever is likely to work in certain way, or certain treatment plan, certain wellness like a fitness or stress release plan will likely to work for you. So that's our goal. And we're also doing a lot of partnership with more like a fundamental research. Like we have partnership with universities about like a pattern of PCOS hormone. So that's also been a miss. So many PCOS patients in the world, we never had a really clear understanding about, how the real pattern for each type of PCOS. There's four types of main PCOS, and how can we have a treatment for them, like to relieve the symptom to make them feel better. We never had that. Yeah, so there's many, and also we have some research about IVF. How do we reduce the cost about IVF? You probably don't need to really go to blood drawing all the time if they can test with Mira, and the doctor can see the hormone profile about responses, to the hormone stimulation continuously from a Mira backend. So that's, definitely will help to improve the treatment outcome and also reduce your costs. Your nurse don't have to call the patients every single day to say, how dark is that line? Are you really close to ovulation? You should schedule right now. Don't get too late. So that will save a lot of cost in there. So I'm a strong believer in the research and the data. We are doing a lot of them, and some can be done by startup companies like us, and some maybe still need the, I think, a bigger, government funding or so on. We rarely got that too in women's health, but it's moving forward.
This episode of the Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM makes some of the most innovative strength training machines on the market, but that's only one part of their integrated ecosystem. With connected fitness equipment, AI-powered gym software, and a comprehensive corporate wellness offering, it's forging the future of preventative health. Partnering with companies worldwide, EGYM's WellPass program improves employee health by expanding access to premier fitness and health facilities. Upgrading gym floors, EGYM equips every operator with smart equipment and AI tools to create hyper-personalized training plans for every exerciser. Putting it all together, they're transforming healthcare through exercise. Experience the power of EGYM's ecosystem at egym.com. It's such a powerful flywheel for a company, especially a consumer, health wellness company, and then in women's health to be able to say, hey, we're essentially spearheading all of this, and our product, our community, our data is driving this forward. And yeah, if you have partners and government funding and all of that, but then you just take that and, like you said, pour it back into the solution and makes it even more powerful. So I think it's something that it's difficult for a company to start out saying like, oh, that's the playbook, like that's how we're going to do it, because so much has to go right to get there. But when it does, yeah, defensible, powerful, compounding, like all those words come to mind. When you think about the kind of landscape, more kind of attention is good, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. And so you have more people focusing on women's health and also hormone. But then there's also a number of, whether it's a wearable device or saliva or subcutaneous like monitoring. Do you think about that as competition? Do you think about one being better than the other, or how you differentiate in that landscape? Like, where does your mind go?
Yeah, I think the mass the it's needed. Actually, a lot of them is like there's different segments for different use case. Like for example, variable, right? You can just use example for continuous glucose monitoring versus glucose meter. So they both have their market segment because they serve different purposes. And also, I say that as the timing as well. So usually people, let's say hormone is a little bit behind the glucose. I think glucose awareness everyone knows, or whether I need to track or so on. Hormone is more on the earlier stage on in that the curve of the customer understanding or market understanding. So usually that will start from some tests like a daily test whatsoever, like a urine test, a saliva test whatsoever. But after a while, when the consumer awareness has been developed or market awareness has been developed, and there's a clearly defined use case about what the continuous hormone monitoring will do, and that is definitely needed. I think there's a market for that. And for now, are we ready for that? I don't think the market is ready for that. Maybe gonna be 5 years, maybe gonna be a little bit longer. And also there's different segments in there too. For example, we work with a lot of integrative medicine doctors, and many of them are talking about this. They like this. They want to see the continuous hormone curve, and they want to see what they can do with that. So that might be some early adopter over there. But if you go to general consumer, it depends on how you design the product. Maybe it's not there yet. It's like a consumers want to understand to say, okay, why do I need to track my hormone? Stick this thing on my arm for so many years. But I see them as there's definitely different diversity in there. Some will come earlier, some will come later. I see them as pretty good. I mean, it's moving the industry forward. And also for the Mira portfolio, Mira is not a static company. We're always evolving. So it doesn't mean we're not gonna get into there. Maybe one day we're gonna get into there, but we have our own strategy. We don't do every product in the world, but we have our view about how women's health or like at least the hormone testing. As I said, the hormone testing is just one thing. It has to be combined with a solution and a very clear use case and how that could evolve for us as a landscape. We have a planning over there. We may get into some of the areas you mentioned. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. There's more player here, and then women's health become more people talking about this and got more attention from investor, from funding side as well.
Yeah, as you're stressing this idea about the specific use cases and then having a solution tied to that, how do you make it so that you're connecting this data and the monitoring to solutions that actually, deliver some type of behavior change?
Yeah. I think the first you have to find the use case. There's always some use case. It may be hidden. It's because we never had a product before. But I believe you don't want to start with something that there's absolutely no pulling from the market. For example, you can imagine that let's say in IVF, right? So there are many people don't want to draw the hormone, draw the blood to test the hormone every day. So that's a clear pinpoint. But obviously, the how strong that is and what will be the perfect product over there, we have to design and to think about that. But there is a clear understanding. I see there's many cases. And for example, another case is like a PCOS ovulation. So as I mentioned, there's really nothing can be done over there today. There's products claiming I can track for PCOS, but they cannot predict the PCOS ovulation because that's so complicated. When I have irregular cycle, maybe I need to test them more often. Then I have regular cycle so that the testing frequency needs is very strong. And especially you can imagine there's sub-segment in PCOS they're trying to conceive. So that's a very strong, like a specific requirements. Or like some people go into perimenopause, they have irregular cycle and they want to feel better. They just want to get the sleep pattern better, sleep more regularly, or they just try to understand what they did the night before and they will tend to have hot flash. I'm just making this up, but those are all legit consumer questions. We can research which one will be a higher percentage major consumer question versus minor, but you can tell there's many micro pain points there. The Either your clients could be doctor, could be patients, they're already pulling for that. So usually we start from those kind of cases, but we expand from there. And when you go in there, you will realize that, well, here is the customer question, but your actual business model is an evolution out from the customer question. If you only address the customer question, you will die over there. You just have a little bit here and you say, oh, it's not scalable. It's not going to become business model. What am I going to do next? You hit the wall and you kill this idea. So that's not how it should be. But once you start to have an entry point in there and you can start to expand, let's say this PCOS situation, right? So someone wants to track it more often, say every day I want to track it, I want to understand if I have a pattern about my hormone. Okay, they start to track. And then you can start to give them a guidance, give the data and give the what they could do. And that needs to be based on research. Research can be longitudinal research based on the data, based on the pattern, and then say, here's my suggestion for you, and collect their feedback and whatsoever. And along the way, you will also hear customer feedback and say, how do I like this solution? I want to have a little bit more. I want to talk to a person. I have probably there's different segments too. I really am stressed out. I just need the therapist. Okay, therapist angle. And I want to talk with a doctor. And here's the doctor angle. You can send patients to doctor. Or I just want to have more contents, personalized contents on the app, or someone just want to have a routine. Routine is very helpful because maybe if let's imagine you eat really healthy, you try to sleep well, you try to keep the sleep hygiene, you keep your time for exercising or meditation every day, of course you're gonna feel better, right? So but it's very difficult to do. So maybe the people just need the app to really help them to follow this routine. So you will see, from this single point about I just want to track my hormone more, I just want to understand myself more. Actually, this can derive into many different paths. And then it's a company decision about what is the product I'm gonna build, which path I'm gonna take. So that kind of bridge, from here's a very, rough idea about the pain points. Everyone's talking about this. Everyone never figure out the solution for example menopause management until to be okay. Now I know what as a company what I can physically build for short term, for long term, both will make sense. So that's kind of how we usually work. It takes time, and especially for Mira, we're really like a pioneer in women's health. Women's health is a young industry, so it's different from like a software SaaS. There's rarely company being like in a, let's say, $500 million revenue yet. So Mira has been a pioneer over there. So we're kind of shaping this. We're trying, and we're trying to explore different model, trying to educate the consumer. But we do see there's a feedback from the market too. When we educate our consumer, they want it. They do want that. They pay, and they want it. So it's a viable path to move forward. And we talk with some doctors, and they also want it too. So there are needs from the market. We capture those needs, find the easiest and the most clear penetration point, and then trying to expand from there and trying to build the industry. And I think if we could be successful, more investors and later, like I mean, earlier stage companies will look at us to say, here might be some role model, and that could be inspirational, and more fundings could go to women's health.
We get towards the end of the conversation, maybe just a couple more questions. One kind of down that path of, as you see this category evolving, you kind of alluded to this earlier, whether it's like, hey, do we partner and integrate, or do we build kind of this full stack solution and think about how we address these different, not just stages of life and conditions, but just kind of needs across the spectrum. As you look at like the broader women's health category, if we even want to call it that, there does seem to be companies that they get funded, they emerge, right, they start getting their footing, and they're tackling something that's pretty narrow. Like there's like one problem or maybe a specific problem, and then over time, really maybe they get acquired or they have to kind of expand into this longitudinal care kind of platform. And what does that look like? So it goes from this thing. This is in some ways like the Hims story. Hims started as like, hey, we're going to do ED for men and we're going to do hair loss. And then it's like, oh, really, we kind of have to do everything if we're going to be a, venture backed multi-billion dollar company. Do you have a perspective on, it sounds like you're, at the place where it's like Mira's going to continue to stay focused and we have a roadmap and we have goals, but do you have like a one's better than the other, or you are more leaning towards, hey, we want to build this full stack solution and have a path to doing that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, we want to be the later one. We want to build a full stack solution. So I think it's a very natural path. I have observed and talked with many startup companies, and usually company has to start with something very specific because you have to be focused. Early stage, you don't have resource, you have limited resource, and you want to solve a very clearly defined pain point. So you can get your revenue, and the team can be running, you can be profitable whatsoever, you can raise money whatsoever. But after that, yes, after a certain time, you have to expand. So that's definitely our vision and our ambition. We want to solve the women's health problem. We want to go to multiple stages for women's health. We started from trying to conceive. Now we're already in menopause. It's doing quite well. And we think irregular cycle will be really interesting. We think postpartum will be really interesting. So that's on the application perspective. And also we want to test more hormones, as I mentioned. You can imagine, there is the for like a home testing. There's Everlywell, there's other, lab test companies. There's many out there. If you go to Amazon, everyone has like hundreds of biomarkers to test. Why can't we do that for women's health at home? If you look at the biomarkers, you will see many of them we need a continuous testing. We never did that because we don't have that technology. Doesn't mean people don't need this. Many hormones will change every day. For example, cortisol, right? So that changed. You can test even 4 times per day in the morning, afternoon, the before you go to sleep is all different, and they have different meaning. And the testosterone doesn't change that often, but also if you combine with some other hormones, that's pretty interesting too. You can understand if your PCOS is getting better, and if you have too much androgen, that might cause the acne, affect your skin condition whatsoever. So even just within women's health, there's much more than just the usual fertility hormones we test. So if we incorporate, hormones like this, even you can go further. For example, ketone. So that's also about the metabolism, right? So that's going into wellness about how your lifestyle is and the how that's affecting your body. If you combine all this data, you can absolutely find something for sure. Find it for the company itself, for research purpose, for our consumer as a feedback to them, as a feature, and to the doctors. And doctor can develop protocol, can incorporate the Mira into their protocol and become a part of the practitioner standard as well. And in our healthcare industry, also there's another one which is a payer. So unfortunately, for fertility, has never been covered by insurance, which is kind of crazy to me because I guess it's lack of reasons because lack of research is not being diagnosed as a disease. But it's true, fertility is a combination, might be combination of many problems. Maybe you're too stressed out, so you cannot get pregnant. But obviously, it's not like here's a cancer. You can say it. There's a cute tumor, so the insurance will cover that. So that needs more data. But good things like right now, there's employer benefits program and covering that. So Mira is now covered by Carol the Maven, Wing Fertility, all these major employer benefit program already. And we're working towards the others, not only about our device, but the entire solution together with our virtual clinic or so on. So you see there's many directions we're trying to go. So our ambition is like we want to really become the women's health testing platform. So not just for your one stage, for your entire life. Maybe your mom can test, the daughter can test, the grandma can test as well at the same time. And also we have all the data. So we have most of data from you, and then we can tell you what to do. And we will also connect with your doctor, help you, at least help you to talk with your doctor better. That's actually a very legit customer ask based on our understanding. They just want to talk with their OB. OB say kind of don't understand. They say, oh, I have this symptom, but OB say, I don't see that in your test results. I just ignore that. So they want to have a better conversation. And we can also influence some doctors on the side, and like integrated medicine doctor is our first try, on the B2B, on the provider side. It's been going really well, and we try to work with the insurance company as well. So basically, we're trying to integrate this personalized home testing for women's health across many stages into a standard into our healthcare. Right now, it's totally not. I know that's a very ambitious goal, but we have step by step plan to get into there. Also, I'm a very open minded person, so I don't really say, oh, competitors ABC, oh, you guys shouldn't be here. It's just our market. I would say that in certain ways that you do need to have multiple players in one segment. That's a very good signal to the funding, to the investor, to some doctor, to other B2B industry. This segment does have opportunity. It's growing, and the people are trying different ways. There are opportunities there, and if some company can come out to be here to be very successful, to exit with a good value or revenue growing really well, that's building more confidence as well. So actually it eventually come back to benefit ourselves.
As you put that plan into action, maybe there's nothing that you can tease right now. You keep everything under wraps. But is there anything that we should look out for that you're particularly excited about? Just giving people something to be top of mind.
Yeah, sure. So we are launching a new product very soon in August, so which is called the Ultra 4 test one. And the Ultra 4 means the four hormones together: LH, estrogen, progesterone, and the FSH. So all on the same test ones. So it will be very easy to test, and this will be your go-to test one. You only need this single test one, and this is the newest generation of technology as well. It's not only combine four together, so it only takes a much shorter time than we currently take on the mirror analyzer. It's following the same technology of immunofluorescence, which is a lab test technology. It's different than anything else on the market by viewing this one line versus two line, or using the phone camera to take a picture of one line versus two line. Actually, eventually it's the same. Input is the same. So it's very different from that. And we also improved many things about our one design. It's easier to use, and it's more accurate. We have data to back up that. So this will be, I would say, this is the most advanced consumer fertility or hormonal test product on the market, and it's coming up in August. And now it's pre-order. If anyone's interested, they can find that on our website.
Yeah. And wrapping up there, where can people learn more? The website, social, newsletter, anything you want them to follow along with?
Sure, sure. So they can go to our website, which is miracare.com, miracare.com, and they can sign up for our newsletter. We have really exciting content in there. We offer free webinar all the time. We are actually organizing our own podcasts, and that also will be free. Definitely gonna go to Apple Podcasts. You can find there too, and the Spotify as well. You can also find out us on any social media platform. Just search Mira Fertility. It's one word, no space. Any social media like IG and the Facebook, or you're on TikTok, Pinterest, whatever. It's all on there. Yeah. So YouTube as well. So just I would really encourage people who are interested in women's health, who are passionate about women's health, who are passionate about fertility, menopause, where you're facing some personal challenge, to follow us, because there's so much free content in there, and something should for sure gonna be helpful for you.
Perfect. We will make sure everything is easy to find in the links, the show notes, and so grateful that you made some time for us today. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fit.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fit.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.